All right. Good morning, everybody. We are live with Ricardo for the Tuesday morning edition of the Reinventing Drawing Group on the Reinventing the Tattoo Network. Ricardo, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good, Lauren. How about you? Thank you for having me this morning.
Awesome.
Yeah, um, yeah, I've had a pretty busy weekend. I took the weekend off this weekend. I went out to Las Vegas. That was pretty amazing. I ended up hooking up with some friends that like to gamble quite a bit, and they're really good at it. So they get free rooms and stuff like that. So they offered me a free room, and I couldn't pass it up. And it was a great experience for me. It was nice to be able to get out of the element. Just kind of peruse around, look at the local area. I've been out there once before, so that was pretty awesome to be back there in a different mindset and a different frame of mind entirely this time around. So it was a pretty cool experience. I have these friends that I haven't seen. One of them I haven't seen since high school, and so that was pretty awesome to be able to catch up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a oxygen filled um, casino. I learned how to play some of the tables or some of the games at the bar there, so that was pretty fun too. Apparently, when you gamble, they give you free drinks too, so that was pretty awesome. But yeah, so I was a little dry this weekend, but feeling much more rehydrated now. I'm back to life. So we're here. But enough of that. Thank you guys for joining us. We have Jason Leeser with us today. Jason Leeser is the host on Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m. Eastern. And he's always a pleasure to be around, man. Very knowledgeable and always so much fun to have on the show with me. Um, and we like to have a lot of conversations about a lot of fun stuff. Um, Last week, we were started going into a couple things. One of them was the process that I use in order to draw some of the images or I guess most of the images that I create. Um, I don't know what I would call it. I guess I'd call it like drawing large to small, where I focus primarily on simple shapes and the relation between these recognized simple shapes and how they affect the composition, and then implementing three simple tonal values to kind of structure out this simple form that we create with light and shadow. And it's a really quick process. I've learned to utilize it pretty well over the years. One of the ways that I started implementing it was whenever I was doing consultations with people, when I started going from a flash artist, street shop mentality and environment into more of a custom kind of tattoo artist. I think I gravitated towards that because I was always following at the time people like Philip Liu, Marcus Pacheco, Adrian Lee, a lot of these grimy, a lot of these big names that I never imagined that I'd be able to meet or talk to, or compare any kind of my work to theirs. But I think I started setting like this manifestation that I wanted to start making bigger work, and all of a sudden it started kind of coming in slowly but surely. So I had to get a little bit faster with the ideas that were being conveyed by the client that was sitting down in front of me. It's not a necessity. It doesn't necessarily have to happen where you have to create this image right away whenever they're there, but it does help in order to kind of set the tone with the client and show them what you're capable of. Not necessarily show off, but just to be able to demonstrate that you're on board with them and you're conveying and relating to the same images or the same ideas that they have for the image that they want to create. Hopefully that wasn't too much rambling, and it kind of relates to what we're going to be talking about today. Um, we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the topics that I want to bring up today, though, is patience. I want to talk about patience in art, and I want to be able to talk about how patience in our life can kind of lend into the process of creating art. As artists, and I talk about this a lot, we struggle with a way of making our art finished. We struggle with a way of even starting some of our art. And we struggle a lot with this goal-oriented idea of where we want to be with our art. That has a lot to do, in my opinion, with personal life choices, organization in that those life choices, as well as organization in an art station I think that they can both kind of relate to each other quite a bit. The definition of patience, the Webster's definition is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. I don't know about you guys, but there's been so many times that I've sat down to draw a picture, and the first thing I want to do in the first 5 minutes of this is it's nothing like what I imagined it to be. It's not cooperating with me. This drawing sucks. I hate it, and I'm going to crumple it up and throw it away immediately. What I've gathered for myself through my, what's the right way to say it? Acknowledgement of it, or viewing of it, or perspective, being able to sit on the outside and observe. The observation of my performance is when I get angry, when that drawing is not cooperating with me, it's not actually the drawing. It's actually you, the artist, the person, the filter, the person that's sitting down and creating this image. You're the one that's getting short-tempered. You're the one that's getting angry or upset. You're the one that's getting all agitated and starting to kind of get sweaty, and your palms are all wet and you're getting all mad. Mom spaghetti, all that stuff like that. So you just, you got to start learning a little bit more patience. Again, I keep talking about this a lot, and I think for me, it has a lot to do with our personal growth. That is in correlation with our growth as an artist. The way we observe things, the way we perceive things has a lot to do with the way we can kind of observe ourselves from an outside perspective. And we're always so used to being behind these eyeballs that are attached to all these emotions that convey what it is that we see. It's like a projector, and when we can sit on the outside of that projector and see the workings of it all, and where the power button is or where the refresh button is. My internet this morning at my house was giving me so much trouble. I was trying to set up this display. I was going to make this Adobe Premiere video for today's class, and I think I'm going to try to do that tomorrow, or get work on it a little bit more tonight. But my internet was giving me so many problems that I couldn't even connect to my laptop, and I kept pressing that refresh button, and it reminded me of what I was going to be talking about today. Is like, that's what we need to do sometimes, is just refresh it a little bit, sit back and chill out and see what it is that's going on. And sometimes we clutter that view, that perspective for the projector by adding too much stuff around it, putting too many things around it that might overheat the component. Or you have to just simply unplug it from the wall for about 5 minutes and then plug it back in and restart it, right? Same thing with us. Same thing with us as an artist. Let's see here. I've thought about like a couple things as far as that's the Webster's definition of patience. But I think there's a slight, subtle difference when it comes to defining patience in art, right? Some people, I've read a few articles over time and recently that say that patience isn't necessarily a virtue, but it's a necessity. I think that could be true. And I see Jason nodding to it and he's agreeing with it. I agree with it as well. However, I think that if we implement that first, if we try so hard to implement that patience first, that we're going to lose sight of what it actually is that we need to learn patience with, right? So it's kind of like one of those there's things that we stumble through sometimes as a human and as a person and as an artist. We can perceive a few things, we've been told a few techniques, but until you actually try and apply it yourself, you're not going to understand that some of those techniques aren't necessarily going to work for you, that you can actually skip some of those prescribed technique movements in order to create the art that you're trying to create. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to what somebody's telling you to do, because you should, entirely and thoroughly. And if you don't know something, shut up and don't say anything unless you're asking questions. Don't try to tell them, yeah, I get it. Listen, do what they tell you to do, learn it for yourself. Then you start to realize that there are some things that you can kind of implement on your own. And there might be some steps that you can kind of miss too. So I will say that it is a necessity. However, it's something that needs to not be paid entirely. There's not an entire amount of attention that needs to be paid to it. because you need to stumble through it yourself in order to find out what it is that exactly you need the patience on when it comes to our technique, when it comes to our art. As we develop patience within our creative pursuits, we gain the power to follow through. That's kind of what I'm talking about. We've grown the ability to resist giving the canvas the middle finger or slamming the door, whatever we're building when we're trying to create something truly amazing. That ability to forge ahead and push through discomfort is everything. It's crucial, right? That discomfort, what we're talking about, I've been talking about, is that ability to acknowledge what it is that makes us sweaty, makes us like just want to crumble it all up. And I would tell you for sure, I've had a few people in my life along the way that have had some pretty good nuggets of wisdom for me. One of them is don't throw away your pictures. No matter how much you hate it, don't throw it away. Actually, you could even create a folder of some pictures that you say, I don't like these. These suck. This made me mad. Whatever it is, put them in that folder and keep them, put them away. And when you're not feeling too well, you're not feeling like you're doing anything, you're not feeling like you're drawing, you're not feeling like you're moving forward with your art, pull them out, see where you're at. Take a look at it, observe it, and find out what it is that you're struggling with. You know, you might be struggling with the same thing. You might be struggling with something entirely different. You might feel like you haven't moved forward. And when you look at some of these old things, you're like, holy shit, I actually have kind of moved forward. I actually have kind of like accessed a different part of my my abilities that help you progress as an artist and as a person. Let's see. I wrote down a couple notes. What is patience? Okay, a patience can require three things. There's that magic number 3. I always talk about 3. A process. Patience can be a process, plan-based, on something we can rely on consistently, right? Something that you can sit down and you know that you make it almost like a ritual. You get your coffee, you get your tea, you get your water, whatever it is, you get your beer. The end of the day, the end of a tattoo work day, depends on where you work. If you're in a private shop, it's a little bit easier to kind of set up a station where you have everything in order to create oil paintings, watercolor, you know, coloring with ink, tattoo ink, whatever it is that you find interesting, whatever it is that you're doing, you know, traditional water spit shading, you know, watercolor spit shading. Have a station, have a ritual that you create for yourself. If you don't know where to start, follow somebody else's. Ask them about it. How do you start? Where do you begin? What's the first thing you do? Where do you even mentally go to begin this process? You know what I mean? Because a lot of it has to do with your mental ability to be able to sit down and even want to make this station that we were talking about. And I know Jason last couple weeks has talked about getting back into oil paintings and how it's important for him to have a station developed just for that. And I couldn't agree more. It's so frantic. If you have so many different things in so many different areas, you spend more time getting organized to paint rather than actually being able to sit down, take a deep breath, access that left, right mode and duality as far as your brain goes, being able to conceptualize these abstract images that we're trying to create, these illusions that we make. And I can't talk about that enough. I can't stress it enough. These pictures that we make, they're not realistic references. They're not photorealistic pictures. We are creating an illusion that we make the viewer observe as real, perceive as real. And all it is a recognized ability to be able to coordinate simple shapes in relation to each other and manipulating light and dark light sources in order to create this depth, this perceived depth of illusion of depth. Another one, the other two is like an understanding of where we are right now, right? And I always talk about this with Jason and Kieran and Bruno, is that no matter how much we fight these things, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're depressed, sometimes we're overzealous, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're so stoked that we can't even wait to share as many like pictures or ideas as possible. Like accept it for what it is at that moment, no matter what it is. Accept it, ingest it, and be with it. I think in this world that we're in right now, we have so much access to so much stimulation that you can distract yourself from any of these emotions at any given moment. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate because I go through these galleries sometimes, these art museums, and I see the age of some of these painters, these masterclass painters or masterclass craftsmen. And it blows my mind that some of these people were anywhere between the ages of 20, 19 to 32, and they've created these masterful pieces of artwork, like room-sized wall paintings, and it blows my mind. I think that at any given time, there is a distraction for that period of mankind. However, without being able to be there, I will say, being at my point in this circle that we're involved with, in this lifetime, this vessel that I'm in right now has so many distractions by electronics, by Facebook, by Instagram, Twitter, whatever you get into. What's the new one? TikTok, all that junk. Be okay with where you're at. Stop allowing yourself to become distracted and accept it, right? The other one is a goal or a dream, something that you want to see happen. Like I was discussing a little bit ago, the manifestation is a powerful, powerful utility to us. And I think we all have access to it. And I think we all can create the world that we want to live in just by acknowledging those moments that we're in and accepting them for what they are, and not beating ourselves up for things that we may or may not have done, not beating ourselves up for things that we want to have but don't have. It goes back to the patience thing, right? It doesn't all happen right away. You can't just click the button and you're going to become this artist that you want to be. Without those struggles, without those strifes, without those strained moments, you will never, ever be able to obtain the level that you want to have. You have to have those struggles. You have to have those battles in order to make this thing happen, to make this thing work for yourself. And it's crucial. I believe that it's crucial. There's a few other things that we could talk about, developing patience, all that stuff like that, but I think we've kind of covered most of that now. I mean, we can go a little bit more in depth to it, like give yourself permission to dream big, give yourself to process and trust it. You have to trust this technique, this moment, and you have to accept that we won't be able to make something perfect right away. There is no perfection. I think for myself, I'll always look at some of my tattoos and some of my artwork and be like, I should have done this a little bit better. I should have focused on this a little bit. My line work is kind of sketchy there. My shading wasn't as solid as I thought it should be. My gradients aren't anywhere that it needs to be. I think it's pretty rad though to be in this forum and this group of people that Guy Atchison helps provide for us, to be able to share these moments and honestly and truthfully put our artwork out there and be able to obtain some very good and constructive criticism. So it's helped me tremendously this year. And I say it all the time, but thank you again, Guy, and everybody behind the scenes that helps make it happen. So yeah, that was a lot of rambling, but I wanted to see what you guys thought. What up, Jason? Go on ahead, buddy.
Ooh, pick me. I've got something. Over
go
here.
For it.
Over here.
Let's see what you had to say, man. I'm gonna drink my coffee.
All right. So totally agree with patience, man. I'm a firm believer that patience is a necessity in this day and age. Mm-hmm. We live in a day and age of instant gratification, right? And we live in a disposable society, right? You spend $1,000 on a laptop and it breaks. What do?
Yeah,
you can spend another $800 to get it repaired, or you can go and you can buy a brand new one with all the latest specs and all that other stuff for $800. Mm-hmm. Do you want to repair the old one or buy a new one, right? So most people just throw it out. So, but I think patience is one of the biggest things that people need to recognize. Rome was not built in a day. Van Gogh did not become the artist he was overnight. Neither did Jackson Pollock. Neither did Da Vinci. These guys spent their lifetimes learning their art and mastering their craft. It's not going to happen overnight. There is no one individual secret. But I think one thing that wasn't mentioned, and that it can be argued goes along with patience, is perseverance.
Absolutely, you're right. You nailed it. Yeah, that's very, very insightful comment there. Yeah. What would you care to like kind of go into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. I would be happy to. You know me, man. Once I start talking, it's like someone pulled my string. I just won't shut up.
Go for it.
Unless you tell me to shut up. In that case, I'll shut up. But that's
no, man. I always appreciate your insight on things. So you go for it. Share with everybody.
So perseverance is one of the big things that I rule my life with, right? And I'm not saying like I'm anyone, you know, like super crazy talented. I'm no philosopher. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I know that. That's okay. I'm not saying I'm not, you know, fairly quick, but you know, I'm definitely not the smartest person in the world. But this is just what I've picked up in my own life experiences. And that's not every tattoo you do is going to turn out great. Not every drawing you do is going to look perfect. Not every painting you do is going to be a finished product. Push past it.
Yep.
If you don't push past it, if you don't have the fortitude to keep going, to see it through to the end, no matter what it is, it doesn't matter if you want to play sports. If you're going to play sports, get out there, play the game. I don't care if you get hurt, play the game, finish the game, right? If you're going to start a season, follow that season through to the end. If you're going to start a painting, finish the painting, right? Regardless of whether or not, you know, regardless of what happens to that painting after the fact, at least finish it. Because as most artists will tell you, if it doesn't look like shit halfway through, you ain't doing it right.
Yeah, right? I've heard that mentioned. I think I heard it mentioned recently. I think I was watching one of Kier's episodes, and she had mentioned that in her in the composition portion of what it was that she was creating, I think. And I kind of like grinned at it, and I was like, yeah, I think I could relate to that. You know, at first I questioned it. I was like, wait, what does that mean exactly? And then I started thinking about it, and you know, it's true, because that's that scary moment, right? Where no matter, you know, what process you're about to create to make the image, and it's a tried and true one, there's always that moment where you're like, okay, this is past the point of no return now. Where are we at?
Right. But you know, it's the fact that once you get to that point where you turn around and you say to yourself, well, this looks like shit. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop where you are? Or are you going to keep pushing through? When you decide to push through and finish it anyway, even if you're not happy with it, even if you know it's not going to be one of the best paintings you've ever done, even if you're going to go through and say, you know what, no one except for me is probably ever going to see this painting. Persistence is the ability to push through that and finish it anyway.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
You know, that is ultimately what matters. You know, there's going to be times when, you know, you feel like your tattoo career is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be times when you look at the artwork that you're creating and you're going to turn around and say, I should be doing better by now.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I can't tell you how many times I've thought that same thing.
I do that on almost a weekly basis.
I think we all do, right? I think we all, especially as artists, you know what I mean? I think I mean, how many times have you heard a friend of yours go, oh man, that looks killer? And you're like, wait, what, dude? I thought you were my friend. You're supposed to be honest with me. What?
Yeah, totally agree. Like that's, but persistence is the ability to push past that. Mm-hmm. It's to say, okay, no, you know what? This didn't turn out the best. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. It did. Agreed. It doesn't look the best, and it's definitely not an example of what I'm capable of.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to do better on the next one. You know what? I suck at anatomy. I know this. You know this. right? You've seen some of my anatomical drawings. They are not very good,
It's a
but
difficult
I know
subject
that's
matter.
something I'm working on, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to give up until I have anatomy down pat,
That's
until I
awesome,
can
dude.
sit down and say, oh, you want a hand? Cool. We'll throw a hand in here. Cool. Done. And it looks great.
Right.
Not to say
You're
everything's going to look great, but it's that whole point of I'm not going to give up on. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to stick it through, and I'm going to keep working on it day in and day out, and day in and day out, until I get to that point that I feel comfortable with it, that I can turn around and say, okay, critique me on this.
Yeah.
That's persistence. I'm persistently going to work on something until I have achieved a certain level with it.
Yep. That's killer, man. I like that, dude. I'm glad that you implemented that word for us today, because that's definitely, and that concept, you know what I mean? That perception of what you're saying, that persistence is that's great, dude. Because that definitely goes in line with patience. It's like the two P's, right? Like the PP. You gotta get it going, man. And you're right, dude. You have to push through. In order to, like, I think that kind of goes along the lines of what I was saying about, you have to kind of stumble, you have to kind of stagger through this sometimes, and you have to be able to say, I'm going to keep going no matter what it takes. Like, dude, honestly, I'll relate to this story. When I was first starting out, after the first 2 years of my career, I started like doing my own thing in my own space, and I remember going to work, and there'd be a couple weeks where I wouldn't do a tattoo at all. You know what I mean? And I would just sit there and literally go, oh shit, what am I going to do? I mean, I had a young kid, another one on the way, you know what I mean? And, marriage and stuff like that at the time, due to house, all that stuff. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I would get dressed up, and put on a little clip-on tie and a shirt and a sweater vest. And I'd start to go into I'd be ready to go into the temp agency. You know what I mean? And each time, dude, no joke, I did it twice. Each time I did, a tattoo would walk in. And granted, it was just a little tattoo, but I was just like, well, here we go. You know what I mean? And then they would call me and be like, hey, you didn't show up for your appointment. I was like, oh yeah, sorry, my work took precedent over my appointment. So I apologize, but let's reschedule another appointment. Okay. So each time, man, so I finally just gave in and started following through all the way. I cut back on so many other things as far as spending, as far as like what I needed to do to make my life work and be able to kind of continue this process. And it finally started catching on. You finally start catching some fish and stuff, so to speak. But you're right. Kind of following through, like you're saying, persistence definitely helped out, man. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's also about sacrifice. What have you made those sacrifices to be at the point where you are?
Yeah.
That's something that I see a lot of people nowadays. They want everything, but they're not willing to give anything that they have up.
Yep. Yeah, it's an expectation, right? That's another thing that I plan on talking about too, is expectations. I think we all have them as people, for sure. But that's definitely the case, man. You have to. You have to fucking sort through your life and figure out what it is that needs to be cut. It's like when you're eating a piece of chicken, you have all this extra fat, you just cut that shit off, or some wilted part of the lettuce or something like that for the vegetarians in the crowd. We cut that stuff off, or a banana,
Well, I keep thinking back to, I was listening to a speech that Arnold Schwarzenegger gave about, how he achieved all that he has. And he said something, and it's kind of stuck with me over the years. He said, we're all given the same 24 hours in a day.
I like this one. I like this speech.
What are you doing with your time? You can't say that there's not enough time, because there is enough time.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to ask yourself, what do I need to do? What do I want to do? And what is going to better me tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, he was saying something like, there's 8 hours or 24 hours in a day. Let's say you sleep 8. You know what I mean? What are you doing with the rest of those hours? And the people that sleep less than you, there are people that are sleeping 4 or 5 hours. They have those extra few hours on top of you for what they're doing to make their world real and make their goals come true, and to fruition. And it's absolutely true, man. Like, Yeah, it's so true. I agree.
Perfect example. I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning last night working on that oil paint.
Awesome.
I didn't even sit down to start painting it until midnight.
There you go, buddy. That's exactly it. And you're following through, man. And it's paying off, I bet, too, isn't it? I can't wait to see it.
A couple hours a day. Hours a day is all it takes. 2-3 hours, and you just chip away at it. But it's having the patience and the perseverance enough to sit down and say, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it right. And it's going to take me some time because I can only dedicate 2 to 3 hours a day to it.
Yep.
But so I know it's going to take me a little bit longer than someone that has 2 8-hour days back to back. But I'm going to get there. It's going to happen. I'll give it a day or two to dry in between, and it'll happen. It's just going to be a longer process.
Mm-hmm. You got it, bud. That's exactly it. I was thinking about this, how this can relate to a lot of the apprentices out in the crowd right now too. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that I hear a lot of people say. I've been talking to more people recently that have wanted me to look at their portfolio with the possibility of having an apprenticeship. One, I don't think I'll do that again. I don't think I'll really ever do that again, especially right now. I don't have that extra time right now, like you're talking about, because I like devoting my time to these things that we're talking about, right? And in order to have the apprentice, I think that I would want to devote much more time geared towards their education. But for all you guys in the crowd right now that are apprentices or are hopefuls to become tattoo artists, this is the key points that we're talking about for you specifically, is those 9-to-5 jobs that you might have. Just because you have that 9-to-5 job doesn't mean that you can't come home and cut out all this extra stuff that you're doing, video games, going out and partying, hanging out with your friends, girlfriend, boyfriends, whatever. You have to dedicate that time for yourself. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to sit down and after your 9-to-5 job, set aside 2 or 3 hours and draw or paint, like Jason's talking about. That's exactly what it is. It's going to set the difference, the precedent for you becoming more than what you are at the moment versus the person next to you that isn't trying as hard. And I think for apprentices as well, a lot of you guys come in and you want this secret formula. And I think there is no real secret formula. I think we all have access to it. Work, dedication, time, and persistence, and consistency, right? And there's this band called Jane's Addiction, and there's an album called Ritual de Habitual. And I always think about it, you know what I mean? Like setting this habit, setting this thing that you do daily, and it almost becoming like this ritual for yourself, you know what I mean? And without it, your day, it becomes to the point, such a ritual of your day, that without it, your whole mentality is thrown off entirely. That's where you have to get. That's where you have to be, in my opinion. There are moments where you have to say, okay, that's that window. And now I'm going to set another window for this downtime, this relaxation, this other alternate happiness, right? That's fine. Go for it. But remember, you have to start separating that time for sure. Absolutely.
Being able to say no and setting boundaries with your time is critical.
Absolutely, man.
It is. I mean, that's time management.
Yeah.
When you go through and you say, I'll take my apprenticeship, my first apprenticeship. Perfect example. I was in school full time. I was working 20 hours a week on top of being in school full time. Mm-hmm. And I was apprenticing 30 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a lot. I had to be very strict with my routine.
Yeah.
I had to be. I had to set boundaries, and I had to tell people, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't participate in this, community fundraiser event because I have things I have to do. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. Being realistic with those expectations as well is another thing that I find to be very beneficial for people that are really just starting to start out. But even after my apprenticeship, I would go through, I would work a 9-to-5, and then I had 30 minutes. By the time I got done work and I got home, I gave myself 30 minutes, literally to a T, to get changed, get something to eat, make another cup of coffee, and get back in the car and get to the studio. And then I
Yep.
would work at the studio till, actually, I think I worked from 8:30 till 4:30, got home around 5:30, changed till by 6, and I was at the studio by 6:30. And I worked at the studio from 6:30 till 10:30, just about every night. And then all day Saturday and all day Sunday, you
Yep.
know? And yeah, it's a lot. But what did I have to give up for that? I gave up a lot of social relationships.
Mhm.
I gave up a lot of, potential romantic relationships. I had to sacrifice all number of different things so that I could achieve them.
Yep.
But that's led to me being here today. I was willing to put in the work so that way I wouldn't starve while I was still getting on my feet and building that clientele base.
That's awesome.
And it was a
dude.
lot. It was an absolute nightmare of a time for 10 years,
Yeah.
but it's what I had to do.
10 years and now here you are. You know what I mean? Here you are.
Yeah.
And then one of the coolest things for me too is like not even realizing that we're collecting this knowledge, right? And it becomes like this passion, you know what I mean? For me, for sure. Not the pursuit and the obtaining of knowledge, but the fact that you're building it as you go, right? And then learning through, like what we said, being persistent, being consistent, you know what I mean? And like I agree with you, Jason, that that's cool because you do have to set this like routine. Like you can set this routine and it can be very fruitful for you if you do that. Some people will say the opposite. Some people say, well, I just kind of went through it and I landed here. That's awesome. I think that there's this energy that we tap into that kind of steers you into the direction that you're supposed to be going into anyway. But I think for me, and like I didn't realize it, Jason, but for a long time I was very haphazard all over the place. And once I started setting a routine for myself, like in the morning, I'd wake up at 4:45, go to the gym, spend some time, eat, draw, get ready for my appointment, tattoo, consultation, have an hour or two for lunch, and then do another tattoo for 4 or 5 hours. You know what I mean? And then repeat. Children at night. You know what I mean? Throughout the day. Without that, dude, I don't think I would have been able to get to where I'm at now for sure. You know what I mean? And like, I didn't realize how much this haphazard, what I thought was entirely haphazard mind needed that routine, dude. Like, it's incredible, man. And like, I think a lot of people enjoy the military kind of thing, not necessarily for the function or direction that the military wants to take you because of their agenda. But I think that routine can become addictive and it becomes like that duh moment, like, well, no shit. It's because they created this environment for you where you followed a program, you followed a routine, and it's set for you. You didn't have to do the hard work to say, this is where I'm going to start. This is how it's going to happen. And and you don't even have to adapt. You just do what they tell you. That's the hard part about being your own entrepreneur, your own artist, working in your own shop or doing your own job, is you do have to pay attention to those moments where something isn't working. And that's exactly what we're talking about with patience as well, is being able to adapt to that scenario where it's like, okay, this isn't really working out very well for me. What do I need to do to change it? And you and I and the other two guys have been talking about this quite a bit lately. It's like, what's the direction that I want to go into now? And what do I need to do in order to make that happen? Right. So, but it all goes back to that routine that you're talking about, that schedule. And it reminds me of that. There's a poem by Charles Bukowski. I think it's like Go All the Way or something like that. If you get a chance, check it out, because it talks about the exact things that you're saying. Like, you might suffer the loss of a relationship, of a wife, of a husband. You know what I mean? You might end up sleeping on a park bench or something like that. One time he says, he's like, but go all the way. You know what I mean? You're going to sleep. You're going to be amongst the gods whenever you realize that you don't need all this other shit. If that's where you want to go, follow it, go all the way. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But yeah, I agree. Routine.
Anything that's worth doing in life is worth doing to the best of your ability, all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit down and you make that decision and you have the self-discipline. And I think that's something that you were touching on a little bit there, is that you have to have that self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You can't slack off. You have to turn around and say, okay, no, I need to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. Not that I get up at 5 a.m. because that's just not me. Like by 9 a.m., yeah, I'll be awake, but I'm also not going to sleep until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning every night.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like you're finding your own solution to the same kind of principle that we're talking about. It's like it's following the same principle, it's following the same path, but you're finding and adapting to it, to your lifestyle, to what works for your capacity and your mental well-being and stuff like that too. Yes. Exactly. Like that's what I was talking about earlier when I first started was you find a method that works, you find a way to do it, but then you learn that it can adapt to your own process, right? It's the same thing with art too, man. Like just because one person uses, these brushes or this certain pencil or this certain way of holding a pencil, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to, but try it first. Try it first and see if it works for you, because I had no idea that I wanted to wake up at 4:45 every day. None. And I realized that with the energy that I have in the mornings and stuff like that, it's best for me to go ahead and get the fuck up. As soon as my eyes open, my feet are on the ground and I'm moving. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the way that my brain works. It doesn't work for everybody that way, but I implore you to at least try. You know what I mean? And then go from there. So that's cool that you get up and you still do it though, dude. You know what I mean? Like you're still doing exactly what it is we're talking about. And all you guys listening, you can do the same thing. Just try not to stay out too late at night and party and drink and shit. And like,
well, and that's something else I wanted to touch on. Over this past year, I made not necessarily a New Year's resolution, but I made the decision that I was going to improve my artwork.
Yeah.
Right. I made that decision and I made that commitment. And I knew that I would have to sacrifice things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I looked at myself and I said, okay, well, what do I need to give up in order to have this? Well, I had to pretty much give up drinking. I had to give up pretty much going out. I had to make sure that all of my other necessity items in life were in line. And it sucked. People were like, dude, come on out. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I've got to wake up. I've got responsibilities tomorrow. I'm sorry, but I need to be on my A game.
Yep.
So I had to sacrifice that in order to stick with the commitment that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks because I really wanted to go out a whole bunch of times, but I knew that if I had done that, not only would that have affected my productivity that evening, but it would have also affected my productivity the next day, because I knew if I woke up, I wouldn't want to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also a very self-aware person, so that might be a little weird.
I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's a gift for you to have that kind of built into you. You know what I mean? I think I can see that about you, that you've been pretty self-aware for a long time. I've actually just started to develop that kind of mindset, you know what I mean? Where I've started kind of like seeing myself and what it is that is actually my doing, like instead of placing the blame somewhere else and stuff like that, being like, oh, wait, no, I did that. Yep, you're right. I did that shit. Who's the reason that I have this hangover, for the second day in a row, or the reason I don't have any money in my bank account, or these people don't talk to me anymore, or whatever the thing may be, you know what I mean? The reason that my art is suffering, the reason my paintings aren't doing as well as I think they could be, my tattoos, my work, whatever you guys think it is, it's start looking at yourself and start becoming a little bit more self-aware for sure. I think it helps with that voice in your artwork as well. You know what I mean? Because you're able to access that portion of yourself that is able to look at what it is that is actually inhibiting you from creating the artwork that you want to create. And a lot of the times, like when we first talked about that first day on your class, Jason, me and Bruno, was vulnerability for me. You know what I mean? Opening up and accepting that constructive criticism, man. You know what I mean? Like that's a big thing for a lot of us, dude. And we have to do that. You have to kind of step back and go, okay, what is it that's actually holding me back? You know the techniques. You have all the right materials. You have all the accessibility that everybody else does, dude. Everything's on the internet now. Everything is there. You type it in the right website, and it's all there. You know, and that's one of the things that I told this young lady the other day. She wanted me talking about an apprenticeship, and I told her, I was like, you know, I see some promise in you, but there's still so much you need to learn with your art first, and I'm not going to teach you art on top of tattooing. You know, like, I want to help you. I will help you along for sure. You want to come in and hang out and draw and stuff like that? Let's do that. You want to do better? How much time are you spending on your drawing? Was the first question that I asked. How much time do you give yourself every night for the drawings that you do? Not very much. I have to work a full-time job. I was like, well, that's up to you to figure out. Start there first, you know? So not everybody's going to hand you everything. So you have to start being self-aware for sure, man.
You know, I always find it interesting when, you know, people that haven't really, you know, invested a whole lot of time into seeking out an apprenticeship,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they just start knocking on doors. They go door to door,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and yeah, I get it. You're going to get rejected a lot. I did.
Yep.
You know, I know that for a fact. I can count at least 20 different places I got rejected from for an apprenticeship until I realized that the secret was time.
Yeah.
Invest your time.
Yep.
If you really want to do this for a living, if you really want to be a part of this culture and to be a part of this community, and not just like a very shallow, like, yeah, whatever, bring me all the Pinterest tattoos, I'll do them all, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if you really want to be an active, influential part of this community, you need to invest your time. And that takes patience and that takes perseverance. But invest the time. Go and hang out at a studio every chance you get.
Yep.
Get a routine down where you're just there hanging out on the couch drawing, and then go and get critiqued by the other artists.
Yep.
You
And
know,
dude,
build that rapport, build that routine, invest that time. Next thing you know, they're going to turn around and be like, yo, can you grab a pair of gloves and help me take this trash out?
Yep. Exactly, man.
There's your foot in the door right there.
Yep. Yep.
And I know that's exactly what I did. And it worked not just once, but it worked 3 different times.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got to show that tenacious appetite. Or you got to show that tenacious ability, that tenacious technique, whatever you want to, however you want to access that word, tenacious, tenacity. You have to have that ability to be able to like want it, you know, like do it, go all the way, dude. Yeah, man, for sure. For sure.
But once again, that starts with putting yourself out there, right?
Mm-hmm. And
you
that goes
need to
back
be
to
able to sit down and say, hey, can you take a look at this? What do I need to work on?
Yep. Yep. And then, you know, I mean, dude, there's so much accessibility to it now. Like I was saying, like Instagram, you know what I mean? Send a DM, Facebook, send a DM. Hey, man, wonder if I can come in and chat with you. You know what I mean? Period. What is it going to hurt? It's never going to hurt unless you ask. And I was so intimidated by that for such a long time, dude. Such a long time. And, oh man, we won't even get into it, but yeah, I agree with you. That's a conversation for another time. Yeah. About the other side of that effect whenever you're not doing what you feel like you can, but you don't, you know what I mean? There's some other things that come along with that as far as emotional stuff goes, but yeah, and reactions and shit like that. But so, man, I love this conversation, but I think I'm going to show some of this time-lapse video that I made this morning. And a little bit last night. I'm going to
stop my video and mute myself so that I can finish breakfast real quick.
All right, Killerman, thank you. Jason, is always such a pleasure to have him on here, dude. And I love the conversations that we have. It helps carry this along so well. Let me see if I can share this screen here real quick. Zoom. Share content screen. All right, here we go. I drink my coffee. Let's see if we can see this a little better. All right, so there's the quick kind of sketch for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the time-lapse video of it. And I'm going to kind of discuss this as we go. So this isn't quite finished yet. But last week, or the week before last week, I was asked to show this process that I use for some sunflowers and some flowers in an arrangement. So I thought I'd go ahead. We started to get into this last week. I went over a few things, but we'll go, if you want to go back to last week's episode and kind of refresh that before you watch this, if you want to, or after, might make a little bit more sense. But we're going to share this video, and I'm going to pause it as we go so I can discuss kind of what's going on here. So here, what's happening is I am implementing this idea and this process that I use in recognizing these simple shapes. Okay, one of the first things I do is I find the line of gravity. Okay, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. I find the line of gravity. And what I mean by that is usually like a symmetry line where I see it kind of being forced down onto the ground, right? This is going to help you with the perception of volume and of weight. Whenever you recognize this and like possibly a parallel line that intersects this vertical line for the like tabletop or something like that. And I'm going through, and what I'm doing is I'm plotting out these higher points of these simple shapes right here. So I'm acknowledging where these are, and this is going to help with my proportions. Okay. And that's one way to do it, is like kind of like a contoured kind of recognition for that. The other thing that I go through and do, and this is all while I'm sketching, these are the things that I'm paying attention to. I'm acknowledging these simple shapes. I'm seeing them, how they relate to each other. They're being broken down into simple geometric kind of shapes. And that's later going to be turned into form with the light and dark light source. And you can see I'm doing that. And here on the left and right side, I'm going to acknowledge where those relations are to the higher points of those ovals in the center of those other two sunflowers on the left and the right. So that's going to give me an awareness of the distance between those shapes in correlation with each other. And again, I always go back to the triangle. This is one of the more recognizable ways. I will do this. I'll do this shape, but more or less I rely heavily on this triangle first. And you can see what I mean by that when I go ahead and outline it again for you. And then I'm going through and I'm going to tell you again, this is what I was doing while I was walking through this. Well, the first thing I did was just kind of acknowledge and want to show you what it is that I'm thinking before I start drawing this picture. So here, what is happening is I'm recognizing those outer perimeters of the ovals, and I'm going to recognize the distance between the two main points. That's the first thing that I acknowledge whenever I see it, is like, what's the highlighted area? What's going to be the focal point? And here's where my focal points are going to be. I've accepted that, and that's what I'm going to start focusing on. Now,
Ricardo?
Yes, sir.
Two things real quick. Number one, I noticed that can't be the focal point because it's not a picture of me.
True that.
So it can't be the ultimate focal point.
Okay.
Now, I do actually have to get running. I'm going to get to the studio early today. I got to do the floors and clean and all that. Okay. So I did want to say thank you very much for letting me pop in here and say hi. Yeah, thank you.
Oh man, thank you for joining us. Why don't you give us a quick shout out before you dip out, dude?
Cool, will do. So my name is Jason Leeser. I run the Sunday afternoon drawing groups here at Reinventing the Tattoo. You can reach me on Instagram at Philly Inc. And if it's cool with you, I'd also like to plug a convention coming up this coming June of 2022. I believe it's the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Take a look at the Deadly Tattoo Convention up in Calgary, Canada. It's being run by James Tex. It's going to be at a casino this year. It's going to be absolutely incredible. Deadly Tattoo and Art Convention. Go check it out.
Cool, man. Thank you so much, Jason. We'll definitely check it out. And you guys make sure and catch him Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And he's always a good time. He's always fun to drop in on and say hello. Thank you, Jason, for the conversation today. I can't appreciate it. I can't say how much I appreciate it, man.
You're very welcome, man. Thank you very much for having me on, and take care. Have a great day.
All right, you too, buddy. Send me a picture of your oil painting.
Will do.
All right, peace.
Later.
Okay, so now that we've acknowledged all these shapes and the recognition of how they correlate with each other, we're going to start implementing these 3 simple tonal values, right? What I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going through and I'm blocking in. Normally what I would do is just go in and do like a very big blob right there, what you see right here. Okay, and then I'll start kind of adjusting these little shapes in it. And that's all medium tone, but it's on a very soft opacity right now. Let me blur this up a little bit more. And as you can see, I start to kind of create those little shapes as far as I've recognized them. And I've gone through this image a couple times already, and I've plotted out my points, those highlight points or the contour shape that I showed you in green. And I've already started recognizing where those shapes go. Here, again, what I'm doing is you can see on the left hand side of this right here, of these little ovals in the center of the sunflower, I'm recognizing those plot points. And I start to draw these light lines on the reference photo so I can acknowledge the angle at which they need to sit in correlation with that line of gravity that I was talking about, or the symmetry line. Right here. This is an important one too. So you can see the relation right there. Those green points on the reference and the green points on the sketch so far. Now, as I start to make these oval shapes with my more dark value, the darkest value that I have out of the 3, I start to realize that I wanted to show you guys what it is I start to pay attention to and the relationship of those plotted angles to kind of help develop the shape of these sunflowers and where they lie within each other. Now, again, intersecting points is an important value to me too. I like to use the plot points as the anchor, and then I will draw one line to the other one in my mind or my visual cues in order to show the spatial awareness and how these shapes fit with each other, how they relate to each other in their own environment. So that's what I did with those orange lines here. Let me get it to the right point here. Sorry. This is why I wanted to create that video. But anyways, here you go. So that's what I do. Okay, so I've already, from my eye, what I've been doing this for a long time. So I've already visualized these intersecting points, these plot points, and these anchors. So for me, that's kind of what I pay attention to whenever I'm drawing these images. I'm going to let it play through a little bit. And you can see how I always use a square brush, and I always go in between smaller to larger brush sizes, and I always mess with the opacity on, usually I will use the medium, that second tonal value, or the medium tonal value, to create my entire sketch. And every once in a while, I'll go back and forth between that and my darkest value with a smaller brush in order to kind of start creating the shapes. You can see the difference here between the broader brush tip to the more fine point tip, where I'm creating those edges. I don't look at it as line work. What I do is I look at it as a sharper edge, okay? I'm not using it like a pencil. I'm using it the way I would use a brush, a paintbrush. Especially here, you can see where I've had that soft gray value right here where it's starting to get dark now. And then I've gone in with my smaller brush, and all I'm doing is just chunking out these simple, recognizable shapes that I see in the reference. I'm also not trying to replicate the reference as is. What I'm trying to do is create my own feel, my own sense of style, and how I like to kind of look at these flowers and these petals. I love sunflowers. I mean, it's a sunflower, right? So I always try to think of them as like these little rays emitting out of this dark hole, this dark, like, you know, black hole kind of area. And this is energy kind of coming out of the center of it, right? I know that might sound corny, but that's what I like to think of sunflowers as, especially. There's a lot of flow to them. A lot of, they look angular, but there's a lot of dynamic curves and things like that to them. And you can see all I'm doing is starting to recognize those angles in relationship to each other and in relationship to that dark mass that's to the left-hand side of that left sunflower. And I'm paying attention to all those angles. Plotting out my points a little bit, starting to clean it up a little bit. This is the other reason I'll say this now, is that why I like to keep the reference so soft. It's easier to pay attention to the overall amount of shade in each shape, and it's easier for you to not become attached or anchored to the reference photo and trying to create the image as is. It's good to use it as a tool, as a resource. You don't want to create it exactly as is, I think. If that's your thing to create a photorealistic picture, that's fine. I like to kind of put a little flair to it, her own artistic voice to it. And it also creates a little bit more interest as far as like line work in a tattoo. So this is where I will start adding much more value to it, much broader shapes to it. And as you can see, we keep going. I'm going to keep on adding more and more value. And all it is a process of building up, smudging things a little bit here and there, and adding more dark values to where I see the values in reference to the photos. And you can see here where I started to smudge that out a little bit. You can see when it went from broad angular brush strokes. So I went and used a smudging tool to kind of get that smudged effect, that painted effect, that smoother tone, to kind of help take away from it being so recognizable and so distinct as some of the focal point. When you soften things up as far as edges go, it pushes it a little bit further back in the background or blurs it out so your eye doesn't fixate on it. Sharper points will bring your eye, sharper points are going to bring more attention to the viewer. So the areas that you want to dissipate or be less focal point, create softer edges there. Now again, I go back to show you where my plot points are at, the angles in which I paid attention to the intersecting points. And this is how I create the image. I've also shown you again where I've paid attention to that line of gravity and the overall simple shapes in the composition. And I just wanted to show where it was to begin with. There we go. Feel free to screenshot that. I'll try to upload it to RIT, this time-lapse video today. You guys can save it, do whatever you want with it, replay it, or just go on YouTube or through the RIT app and watch it over and over as much as you need to. And feel free to DM me any questions or anything like that. And let me know what you think. I'm going to stop this screen share. And I think that's about it for today. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. Jason, thank you so much. If you guys get a chance, make sure and tune in again next week. We'll be going over a couple more things. If there's any subject matter that you want to see drawn or painted, let me know. If you have any questions about today's topic, hit me up. And always feel free to message me on Instagram at Candor Tattoo. That's CANDOR Tattoo, or on the Reinventing the Tattoo app under Ricardo Sturdivant. I wanted to say thank you, Lauren, for helping out today. And anybody who else is tuning in, thank you, Guy Atchison, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of your wonderful informative tattooing experience. And thank you, Gabe Ripley. Thank you, Sandy, and Bruno, Kier, Jason, hello, and everybody else who tuned in today. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.